Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here. Look, if you're a focused learner who geeks out over complex logistical puzzles, you are in for an absolute treat today. We're going to be treating this wildly thrilling narrative, full of theft, betrayal, and, honestly, some high-octane vehicular maneuvering, as a literal masterclass in tactical logistics. We're going to deconstruct the sheer, brilliant mechanics behind one of the most intricately planned operations you will ever see. To really grasp the sheer scale of this operation, you just got to look at the staggering stakes of that initial Venice robbery. $35 million. I mean, that is a literal mountain of solid gold, all sitting in a heavily guarded safe. Pulling off a heist like this, it's not just about breaking in. It requires an unbelievable synchronization of timing, engineering, and, let's be honest, sheer audacity. Which brings us right to the central mystery we're unraveling today. How exactly do you steal a $35 million safe in broad daylight right out from under the noses of armed security without ever firing a single gun? That's the real genius of this crew's non-violent, perfectly timed strategy. It was never about overpowering the guards, it was about completely outsmarting them. All right, let's dive straight into Part 1, the ultimate gold heist and its flawless execution.
So, to pull this off, the crew actually employed a brilliant, ancient stratagem, luring the tiger away from the mountain. It's a tactical deception. They used explosive charges, not to destroy the safe, but to drop it precisely through the floor and right into the canal below. But here is the truly brilliant part. As the safe vanished, the crew hoisted a decoy onto a small motorboat and just sped off. The panicked guards chased the boat, completely abandoning the actual drop zone. The tiger was lured away, leaving the real target resting silently at the bottom of the river.
Okay, so once that safe is completely submerged, it turns into an absolute race against death. The clock is furiously ticking. The master lockpicker, a guy named John Bridger, has to endure enormous water pressure while his crew monitors the police scanners up on the shore. They realize they have exactly 7 minutes before law enforcement completely swarms the area. Under suffocating tension, John manages to pick that complex underwater lock in just 3 minutes. Boom! They load the gold into motorized bags and vanish right onto the noses of the police.
But then, the tone completely shifts. Part 2, the ruthless betrayal, a totally cold-blooded ambush.
This moment brutally illustrates the complete dichotomy between the two leaders of this group. On one side, we have Charlie. His method is all about meticulous planning, flawless teamwork, and a really strict no-guns policy. And on the other side, we have Steve. Right in the middle of their joyous snowy mountain getaway, Steve blocks their vehicle on a massive dam and reveals his true method: ruthless violence and selfish greed. Without a second thought, Steve murders John, steals the gold, and fires relentlessly into the freezing water after the rest of the crew plunges their car into the lake, fully intending to drown them all. Miraculously, Charlie and the crew barely managed to survive by using backup oxygen tanks they had stashed in the car.
Now we move to Part 3. Assembling the crew for a highly specialized revenge operation. Charlie actually spends an entire year tracking Steve down. And to take down a fortified enemy, you need a seriously elite, albeit kind of eccentric team. So Charlie brings back the original crew. We've got Lyle, a computer genius who swears his college roommate stole his idea for Napster. There's Left Ear, an explosives expert who lost his hearing blowing up toilets with M80s when he was a kid. And Handsome Rob, the premier wheelman holding the record for the longest freeway chase in LA. But the final, absolutely crucial puzzle piece is Stella, John's daughter. She perfectly inherited her father's legendary lock-picking talents, becoming a top-tier safecracker in her own right. And she joins up without hesitation to avenge her dad. Which brings us to Part 4, infiltrating the fortress and overcoming Steve's intense security.
With the crew back together, they face this immense logistical puzzle. They have to break into Steve's heavily armed Los Angeles mansion, which is just crawling with guards and attack dogs. Stella does some brilliant social engineering, posing as a telecom tech to map out the house. But they hit a massive hurdle. The hallway leading from the main entrance to the safe is only 6 feet wide. The safe weighs nearly a ton. Moving it by hand out to a standard getaway car is literally impossible. This physical constraint forces a brilliant pivot in their master plan.
Charlie realizes, wait a second, a 6-foot hallway is just wide enough to drive a Mini Cooper inside. But of course, a standard Mini cannot carry a literal ton of gold.
So they hire this underground mechanic named Wrench for 10 grand to drastically upgrade the suspension and horsepower of 3 Mini Coopers. Each of these tiny little cars is reinforced to carry 2,700 pounds of solid gold, while still being fast enough to outrun whatever is chasing them.
But, even the absolute best-laid plans are incredibly fragile. During a restaurant date with Steve, Stella accidentally slips up and uses a very specific catchphrase. She says, "I trust everyone, it's the devil inside them I don't trust." That was the exact phrase her father, John, used all the time. Steve immediately recognizes it, and he realizes exactly who she is. Just like that, the element of surprise is completely blown. Steve knows they're alive, and he knows they're coming for his gold.
So, time for Part 5, the subway extraction, adapting the plan on the fly.
When your cover is blown, a perfect plan requires immediate adaptation. Steve panics, right? He decides to move the gold to the airport using 3 heavily armored decoy vehicles, all while he watches from a helicopter. Well, Charlie counters with some highly coordinated clockwork. First, Lyle hacks the city's traffic cameras to figure out which of the 3 trucks is actually weighed down by the gold. He identifies it as truck number 128. Second, Lyle manipulates the entire traffic grid, turning all the lights green to force that specific truck along a predetermined route. Finally, Leftier plants explosives directly beneath the street exactly over a subway line, just waiting for that armored truck to roll precisely over the drop zone.
The execution here requires breathtaking precision. The team in the Mini Coopers rushes into the underground subway station, but they have exactly 90 seconds to outrace an incoming train. They speed past the front of the train just as it pulls in, giving Lyle the chance to cut the transit power. The massive train grinds to a halt right at the station entrance, perfectly blocking the tunnel so the police can't follow them in. They basically created an isolated underground vault for the heist. So they blow the floor, drop the armored car through the street into the subway tunnel, but Stella faces a terrifying new hurdle. Steve actually upgraded his safe. This new model features a glass relocker defense mechanism. If Stella uses a drill and accidentally shatters the glass plate behind the lock, the whole thing permanently locks down. Forever. So she has absolutely no choice but to ditch her modern tools and rely entirely on her dad's traditional manual method, using only her sense of touch, all while under an agonizing time crunch.
Blocking out the absolutely deafening tension, relying solely on her heartbeat and her fingertips, Stella actually manages to crack the mechanism. Now, Steve had already spent some of his stolen wealth, but the crew successfully recovers the remaining $27 million, rapidly loading those heavy gold bricks into the reinforced suspensions of the 3 Mini Coopers.
And that leads us to the finale, Part 6, Trapping the Traitor and the Final Getaway.
Now that the gold is secured, avoiding Steve's wrath is just as vital as securing the bag. Steve's armed guards are pursuing them on motorcycles through these narrow, dark underground tunnels. So, Rob executes a spectacular 180-degree spin crash, instantly neutralizing the ground threats. But Steve is still on them, pursuing aggressively from the air in his helicopter. Charlie makes a bold leadership decision. He splits off to act as a solo decoy. He draws the helicopter's attention in this crazy, high-speed game of cat and mouse that eventually forces the chopper to crash. This buys the Mini Coopers the exact window they need to drive straight off the platform and into a waiting chartered train car.
What truly seals Steve's fate, however, isn't just the crew's unbelievable driving, it's his own past mistakes catching up to him. Let's connect back to an earlier detail. Remember those gold bars? They were stamped with the image of a Parisian dancer, linking them directly to the highly publicized Venice robbery. Well, in his rush to liquidate the gold earlier, Steve tried to sell it to an underground jeweler. When the jeweler recognized the stamp, Steve ruthlessly killed him, unknowingly murdering the cousin of a powerful, notoriously brutal mob boss.
Steve, who hijacked a pickup truck after his crash, manages to track Charlie to the train station. Thinking he can still just bribe his way out of anything, Steve frantically tries to pay off a ticket inspector to get onto the departing train. But the inspector? He's secretly part of Charlie's crew. Charlie steps out, completely victorious. Steve tries to pull a gun, but he's immediately disarmed by 2 burly enforcers. You see, Charlie didn't just take the gold. He tipped off that angry mob boss, leaving Steve to face a fate far worse than death at the hands of the criminal underworld.
Which really leaves us with this final provocative thought. We all love to marvel at meticulous logistical planning, but as we've explored today, a perfect plan rarely survives contact with the enemy. So ultimately, is a perfect plan defined by its flawless execution or by a team's ability to seamlessly adapt when everything falls apart? Thank you so much for exploring this phenomenal case study in strategic flexibility with me today. Catch you next time.